Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. Welcome to our Janna guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. We're going to start off with a brief overview of the champion, kind of giving you their general play style so you know if this is someone you want to invest your time and resources into. Up first, we have cost reduction. This is the main theme that the entire deck is built around. So if you like cost reduction, you're going to love this champion. Next up, we have the Snowball playstyle. Because everything in her kit, all of her star powers are built around that cost reduction, you can snowball that advantage to really take control of the game and rush down your enemy. Now, this does have a downside of if you're not able to get some cost reduction going, you're not able to snowball that lead, and that will often cost you the game. Next up, we have burn damage. Through her upgrades and some of her spells, she actually has a large amount of burn damage to take down the enemy nexus just through spells alone. Up next then, we have some built-in draw. Janna has a whole bunch of draw built into her kit, so that with all of these cost-reduced cards, you're able to draw more cards so you don't run out of things to play. And then last up, we have strong removal. Not only do some of her spells give you a lot of burn damage for the enemy nexus, they also work pretty well at taking out enemy targets. Alright, that's it for this brief overview. Let's hop in game to better explain some of the points we touched on here. In game now, here you see we have Janna at level 30 with 3 stars, so fully maxed out. If we take a look at her star powers, we have What's Up Draft, rank 2, so when you play a cost reduced card, reduce the cost of the top 2 cards in your deck by 1. If you just have the 1-star version of this, it's just reduce the cost of the top 1 card in your deck by 1. Now this can stack up, so if you play multiple spells, you will keep reducing down the cost of those top cards in your deck. So if you play a whole bunch of cost reduced cards, the card at the top of your deck will probably be 0. We also have Eye of the Storm, plus 1 starting mana. When you play a cost reduced card, grant the weakest ally 1/1. So as you see, both of these are just when you play a cost-reduced card. So if you're able to keep playing cost-reduced cards, you're just going to keep snowballing. But if you don't play any, you can't get any cost-reduced cards, then you essentially have no star powers, and you will often lose the game. Taking a look at her starting deck, so we have Forged Chief here, 1 cost 2/1, strike, refill 1 spell mana, and you get that Shadow Totem, so you can try to play this early. Great for putting on some early aggression, but I actually find the Shadow Totem is really good for blocking. This is either going to dissuade the enemy from attacking because they don't want to attack into that ephemeral, or you just have a free blocker that you don't really mind if it dies. Pretty solid upgrade there with that Shadow Totem. Also just the fact that when these are getting those strikes off, they're giving you a little bit more of that spell mana. Next up then we have the Ballistic Bot, so 2 cost 1/3 augment and that tough. It also has round start, create a ignition in hand. Now this augment, when you play a created card, grant me 1 power. This ignition right here is going to count as a created card. So every time you're playing this and any other created cards, you're going to be buffing up this unit's power. So it is able to scale up. Now the great thing about this ignition, gives you a little bit of burn damage. But if you get a power like Wild Inspiration, this ignition will count as a cost-reduced card, so it's something you can just keep playing over and over again, every round triggering your star powers. Also, if you get the power Spellslinger, again, this is a way to just keep getting a free cost-reduced card every round. And this even pairs very well with the Scourge Stash that you can see over here, which is Plunder, I cost 2 less. So often you can play this Ballistic Bot on the very first round. Round 2, you play the ignition, deal 1 damage to the nexus, and then you can play your Janna a round early. All in all, a pretty solid card for a lot of different playstyles you can enable. Next up then we have Howling Gale. So 3 cost slow, deal 2 to a unit, increase my damage by 1 for each other card you've played this round up to 3 times. So if you play a bunch of other cards, this can deal up to 5 damage. Then it also has that Grifter's Deck. Shuffle 2 cards of me into your deck, they cost 1. So if you're able to play this early and get those extra copies shuffled into your deck, 1, this mitigates one major issue you can have, which is running out of cards before you end the game. That'll probably be an issue for you early on, but this helps solve that. But this also helps solve your issue of not having any cost-reduced cards. Now, you can't really play this too early in the game. It's not going to be that consistent, but this is giving you more cost reduced cards you then can play in the future to keep triggering your star powers, and then this is also a fairly strong removal spell to take out enemy targets. Next then we have Patrol Warden, so 3 cost 4/5. When I'm drawn, I cost 1 less this round. Gets that Giant's Belt. Here's another card that is going to give you some cost reduction, but again, this is going to be fairly inconsistent because if you don't draw this card, then you don't get that cost reduction, or you might have an issue where you draw this card but you still don't have the mana to play it. So again, bit inconsistent, but it is one of the cards you can use to start triggering your snowball effect with that cost reduction. Next then we have the Sump Dredger, so 3 cost 5/4 from that Studded Leather. This has the effect of play, discard a card to draw 1, so giving you a little bit more draw, and then also that Arcane Knowledge when I'm summoned to draw a spell. This is fairly nice because you have some very strong spells in your kit, so getting that specific spell draw is very nice to have. Next then we have Gotcha, so 4 cost fast. When drawn, I cost 2 less this round, then deal 3 to a unit with that Pyromantic Wake. Also deal 3 to the enemy nexus, so really strong here, both removal and also some burn damage. And you even have that Ardent Censer, grant the top ally in your deck 3/3. This is a very solid card. Again, giving you some of that cost reduction, but then good removal, good damage, and even buffing up the top unit in your deck, which you're going to hopefully be reducing down the cost of as well. Again, though, this card can be a little inconsistent, since you might draw it when you don't have the mana to play and benefit from that cost reduction. But again, another card that could help you start to trigger your snowballing effect. So overall, really solid card to have in your starting deck. Next then we have Janna herself, so 4 cost 2/4, play Updraft 2 to draw 2 at the next round start. That Updraft, shuffle it into your deck and reduce its cost by 1. And each round, the first 3 times you draw a card, reduce its cost by 1 this round. So this makes her very, very important to your deck. You want to have her on the board as early as possible because she just makes it so that when you draw a card, it's guaranteed to be cost reduced. So you really need her to start your snowballing and get those consistent cost reduced cards going. Now her level up is I've seen you play 6 cost reduced cards, so she has to be on the board in order to level up from you playing those cost reduced cards. You can't just play them and then play her and have her level up. Once she levels up though, she goes to a 3/5 with Elusive, very nice. Now round start, draw 1, you just get 1 extra draw every single round. And now when you draw a card, reduce its cost by 1 this round. There's no longer a limitation on this, it's not just the first 3, it's just any cards you draw this round, and you get extra draw every single round. Very strong level up effect, especially getting that Elusive. She often turns into your win condition because she can just sneak by and hit that enemy nexus. For her power then, or her champion spell, Eye of the Storm, 4 cost burst, give an ally 2 power this round, draw 2, and then since it's her champion spell, also create a Janna in your deck. Now this is a fairly expensive card, but it is normally worth playing, especially since normally those cards you're going to be drawing will be cost reduced. So this is a pretty solid addition. Stacking Janna and getting more copies of these really doesn't feel too bad. Next up then we have the Divine Whirlwind. So 5 cost fast. If you've drawn 3 or more cards this round, I cost 2 less. So again, another card that can give you some cost reduction. And then deal 3 to a unit and 2 to the enemy nexus. But this has that charging sigil, so both of these are going to be increased by 1. Again, good spell for taking out enemy targets, as well as damaging the enemy nexus. And it has that built-in cost reduction, so overall, very solid card for your kit. Last up then, we have the Exalted Cloudwinder. So 5 cost, 5/4 with that Phage. It has quick attack, and then when you've drawn 3 or more cards this round, I cost 2 less. So often you can play this for 3 costs or less. But then when I'm summoned, draw 2 at next round start, so getting even more card draw, very, very nice to have. Overall, this is again a solid card, giving you some built-in cost reduction, as well as built-in draw for the next round start, and it just has a good stat line and good keyword. Her deck is definitely solid, really good play style. The one issue again though is just if you're not able to start playing cost reduced cards, you really will fall behind and struggle. Let's take a look at her champion level ups just so you know when you actually get these different upgrades. So starting off, your Howling Gale gets that Grifter's deck. This is a very solid upgrade because Low-level Janna can really run out of cards quite quickly, so this really helps mitigate that by constantly shuffling more cards into your deck. Patrol Wardens get that Giant Belt, decent upgrade, making them a little bit tankier. Ballistic Bot gets that Chain Vest. Tough is actually a very solid keyword to have, makes units a lot tankier in most situations. So this is a really nice upgrade, allowing this to have time to scale up its power, so it can really be a threat on the battlefield. Gotcha gets that Ardent Sensor, granting that top ally in your deck 3/3. Decent upgrade, but we're more looking forward to that burn damage we get later. 12, the Sump Dredger gets that Studded Leather. Again, it's just a fine little stat upgrade. Forge Chief at 15 gets that Shadow Totem, that ephemeral copy, very nice to have, even just for some extra pressure on the enemy, or just to be able to block a large enemy target. At 18, that Divine Whirlwind gets that Charging Sigil. It is just 1 extra damage, but that counts for both the damage to the unit as well as the enemy nexus, so it is more impactful than it probably sounds with just that +1 damage. 21, the Exalted Cloudwinder gets that Phage. This turns it from a okay unit to a very solid one. Before this, you'll probably still be playing it because if it's cost reduced, you just want to keep playing cost reduced cards. And then also getting that extra draw at next round start is normally worth it just for that effect alone, because the stats are pretty weak without that Phage. But here at level 21, once you get that Phage, it now turns into a really solid unit just for those stats and keywords, in addition to those very strong effects that it has. 24, your Gotcha now gets that Pyromantic Wake, so deal 3 to the enemy nexus, as well as dealing 3 to a unit. Really, really solid upgrade, and this really turns you to a deck that has some burn damage to a burn damage deck. Then the last upgrade at 27, at least as far as items on your cards, the Sump Dredger gets that Arcane Knowledge. When I'm summoned, draw a spell. Since you have such powerful spells, this is actually a very strong upgrade. I think they really did a solid job with her deck. I didn't really expect them to go towards this burn damage sort of playstyle, but it is actually quite fun to do in game, especially because when you have so many cost reduced cards, you only have enough space on your board for 6 units. And quite often you have that full, so them focusing a little bit more on all of your spells is a very smart strategy, because you can keep playing spells even if you have a full board. It can be a little frustrating early on, definitely. She is very much a snowball champion where really can take control of the game once you get going, but if you're not able to get going, it's quite painful to play. Enough about the deck though, let's go take a look at the relics. So as you see here, this is my setup I currently have for Janna. The Scourge-Stash Plunder I cost 2 less. Really solid card or relic to have. You can trigger this fairly easily, like I said earlier, with your Ballistic Bot. And it's really important to get this champion on the board as soon as possible. So the Scourge-Stash actually works out quite well there. Chemtech Duplicator, when you play a spell, if you have 6 or more mana gems, copy it with these same targets. Now, really, really good relic as long as you are getting to those 6 or more mana gems. Now that will normally be the case, but especially as you get higher up, you might be noticing that you're just ending the games too fast. If that keeps happening to you, you might want to swap this out. Otherwise, this is going to be a very solid spell, especially once you get that burn damage going, because this can really just help you nuke the enemy nexus. Luden's Tempest, all your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. Now you have a lot of spells that deal damage in multiple ways, both to enemy units as well as a nexus. So this is increasing the damage of both of those by 1. And this again just makes you have very strong removal as well as very strong burn damage. So this is my go-to build at the moment, and I'm very much enjoying it. Found Fortune, this epic relic that I just actually picked up today. Not sure yet, haven't tested it out yet, but play, draw a card that costs less than my base cost, grant an epic item to it, and reduce its cost to 0. It is a cost-reduced card, so that actually might be something you want to play with Janna, but since this is an epic relic, it's obviously going to be very hard to get, so I don't expect many other people to have that. The Archangel Staff, round start, refill my spell mana. Like we've talked about, your spells are very powerful, so having that extra spell mana is pretty solid to have. Corrupted Star Fragment, support, kill my supported ally and grant me its keywords. Now, Janna will often transition to be your win condition and deal damage to the enemy nexus herself when she gets that elusive. So getting those stats on her so that she can hit the enemy nexus is very solid. Also, with all your cost reduction, like we talked about a little bit earlier, you can only have 6 units on the board, and so sometimes you have a whole bunch of other units you could play, but your board is also too full to play them. So being able to take those stats of your units and put them on Janna while clearing up your board. This can be pretty solid to do. Crown Guard Inheritance, when I level up Rally, normally not the most important thing to use. Since your level up, you normally don't have a massive amount of damage to swing at the enemy Nexus, but if you are playing with Corrupted Star Fragment, then normally the first couple rounds you can try to get some extra stats on Janna, and that might make Crown Guard Inheritance a little bit better to use. Green Glade Shadeleaf, grant my supported ally Elusive. This can be decent for Janna, especially once she has Elusive herself. She can just slowly start granting her entire board that Elusive. Another decent relic you may want to consider. Hymn of Valor, when I'm summoned, create a redoubled Valor in hand. It costs 3. So this, normally a 6 cost card, that being down to a 3 cost, will be cost reduced, so that can trigger your star powers. Pretty solid, and then also buffing up a unit and doubling its stats could be pretty good. Something you, again, may want to consider, especially if you're running Corrupted Star Fragment, since you can use that to completely double the stats you've already consumed and really focus on ending the game that round. Blade Rack, allies have Challenger, always a solid card, making sure you can just perfectly attack with all of your units, challenging exactly the best target for them. The Deceiver's Crest, when I level up, create a copy of my champion spell in hand. It costs 0 this round. Now again, 0 cost card, cost reduced. That's going to help with all of your star powers. Your champion spell, just in case you forgot, right here, the Eye of the Storm. It is a 4 cost spell, so normally pretty expensive. But give an ally 2 power this round and draw 2. This can be good if you're trying to push for a win when you level her up. So you'd maybe want to add Deceiver's Crest and maybe Crown Guard Inheritance and try to level her up and then use that elusive unit to immediately attack and do a good amount of damage. The Grand General's counter plan, I don't think this one is really worthwhile for Janna herself. So round end, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. So this is going to make her champion spell in your hand every round. Now normally you're going to have a lot of copies of her anyways, and so you'll have those copies floating around. You don't necessarily want to be playing her champion spell every single round. So personally, I don't really feel like it was ever needed, but if you just always want to make sure you have that spell in hand, this can be a decent way to go. Gravedigger Spade, round start, draw 1 and give it fleeting. If you're wanting even more draw, this can work out decent for you. I find this works much better on Nyla, as with Janna, you don't really care about having that fleeting effect, and you normally have enough draw that this isn't really needed. Last up then, for rare relics, Troll King's Crown, allies have Overwhelm. Very strong, consistent relic, always helping you try to end games as fast as possible, especially for Janna as you are working on buffing up your units from your star powers. So if you want a very simple relic, but one that'll help you end games a little bit faster, it is always a solid addition. Now for common relics, I would actually highly recommend using your Z-Drive prototype. This is probably the best common relic for her. Start adventures with 2+ rerolls. With Janna, you want to reroll fairly aggressively, especially for your first power, so you can get anything that has some sort of cost reduction on it. We'll touch on the powers you want to get right after this, but this is a very solid relic to have, and probably the best common relic you can use for her, since those rerolls and getting the right powers is so important to your playstyle. If for some reason you don't want to use those though, Star Child Staff, game start, heal your Nexus 5. Really good having a little bit of extra sustain. Chameleon's Necklace, game start, create 2 copies of me in your deck. Like we said before, she really is your win condition. You need her on the board to get that cost reduction, and then normally with that elusive, she's actually your unit you're going to destroy the Nexus with fairly often. Then Lost Chapter, when I'm summoned, refill your spell mana. Very solid since you have so many strong spells, being able to play those right after you play the champion. Good addition. And then Banshee's Veil, just in case you want a little bit of extra protection. Alright, that's it for the in-game portion. Let's go look at what powers you might want to shoot for support champions, and we'll finish off with our ranking of the champion overall. Taking a look at relics now, first up we have Quick Draw. Now note that it says here that this is common. They've actually changed this to rare. I need to get another photo of it. But cards you draw cost 1 less this round. This is obviously amazing for Janna, giving you consistent amounts of cost reduction, and then you have a lot of draw built into your kit, so you can get many different cost reduced cards. This will really help you out and really start your snowballing. Definitely one to look out for. And remember, this one is now rare. Spellslinger, your spells cost 1 less. Again, built-in cost reduction for just all of your spells. You need that cost reduction to get your snowballing going, so having more cost reduction, very good to have. Last up here then we have counterfeit production. Common, round start, create a fleeting zero cost counterfeit copies in hand. Now the important part about this is these are discounted cards or cost reduced cards. So playing one of these every single round will be triggering your star powers and really help you snowball. The counterfeit copies also can be a decent way for you to shuffle back in more cost reduced cards into your deck, and is a great way to consistently trigger your star powers. Next up then, Elemental Winds. This was just added this expansion. Your spells and skills deal 2 extra damage. Very good for all of your different spells, especially since your spells can benefit from this twice very often, since they will be damaging a unit and the Nexus, and both of those effects will be getting that 2 extra damage. So very strong for you to pick up. Sorcery, round start, refill your spell mana. Again, having the freedom to cast your spells when you want, very nice to have. Higher Education, again, they actually buffed this one to be rare. So even though it says common here, it is actually rare in game. When you draw a card, give allies 1 power this round. You do have a lot of draw, so this can be a great way to push extra damage and either end the game or just eliminate enemy units. Last then for the different powers we're showcasing. So we have Crush, allies have Overwhelm. Again, a great consistent relic just to try to push a little bit of extra damage and end games as fast as possible. Overprepared. So common power, game start, create a random equipment in hand. It costs 2 less. Now this is specifically important because of that last part, it costs 2 less. So this is going to be a cost reduced card that's fairly cheap in your opening hand. This is great even if you don't care about the equipment at all. That doesn't matter. It's just a cost reduced card you can immediately play and start triggering your star powers. That's the important part here. Then last here, reset. This shows that it's common. They actually changed this now. Or this shows that it's rare. They actually changed it to a common. I need to get more photos of the different powers. Game start, create 3 chrono breaks in your deck. Now the chrono break, what it is, it's a 3-cost slow spell. When you play it, it revives all of your dead units from this round, and then it lets you rally. So very strong effect. With all of the draw that you have, you can normally get this out fairly consistently. While it's normally a weak power for most decks because they can't consistently pull it out of the deck, for you and all your draw, normally that's not going to be an issue. All right, that was it for powers. Let's go take a look at support champions. As always, this isn't a exhaustive list. This is just some champions you might want to keep an eye out for, or the reasons why you might want to choose certain champions. So first up, Nexus damage. You have a lot of Nexus damage built into your kit, and getting more of it, or getting a champion that scales with Nexus damage can be a solid addition. Next, draw. You have a lot of draw, so any other champions that also scale with draw can again be very beneficial. And last up, we have scaling. Once you get rolling and you can start playing all these cost reduced cards, you are buffing up your board fairly consistently. So any other decks that scale well with scaling are a solid addition. So first up, we have Swain. Swain goes very well with Nexus damage, and so picking him up as your support champion can be pretty solid. Then we have Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate, normally pretty difficult to level up because you need a lot of draw. That's really not a problem though for you, and he can be a very strong addition to your deck. Then for scaling, we have Bard. Bard, putting all those chimes in your deck, with all of your draw, you'll be able to get those out and really help further buff up your whole board. The main thing though for support champions, if you see any that have a cost reduction item on them, that's probably what you want to go with. So really pay attention to items when you're looking at your support champions, because cost reduction really is the most important thing for you. Next up then, some cards to look out for. So Suit Up here on the left. When drawn, I cost 2 less this round. Grow an ally to 4/4. Again, you don't necessarily care about that last part, the grow an ally to 4/4. Can be nice if you see it, but really it's that cost reduction you're looking for. Next, the Dedicant of the Challenge. 2 reasons you want to get this. 1, you see, it is cost reduced. That is massive. Cost reduction built in that you don't have to rely on, just one that's always going to be cost reduced. Very nice to see. Then when I'm summoned, updraft your hand to grant me 1/1 for each card updrafted, then draw 2. So this can be great for, again, putting a bunch of more cost reduced cards in your deck, and can be a very strong card on your board. But really, any card with cost reduction, very solid. Next here, then, you see the Scavenged Cam Cloaker. So 1 cost because that tier of the goddess. Grant an ally Elusive and Nexus Strike, draw 1. So very strong effect here. And again, it is cost reduced. That's really what you're looking for any cards you get from the shop or from after battle rewards. If it's cost reduced, you want it. Then last here you see Wuju style, 0 cost burst. Give an ally 2 power this round, create a meditation in hand. Then you have that lucky dice and a mana potion, making so that this card is free. It has a 50% chance to make another free copy for you to play. And then it's also making a a meditate. And so if you have either Spell Slinger or Wild Inspiration, that would give you another cost reduced card. Now again, while some of these cards specifically might be ones you want to look out for, biggest thing as always is just look for any card that has cost reduction. As long as it's one that can slightly work for your deck, you want to have it, since that's the most important thing to start your scaling. Last up then for the rankings, I think pre-level 20, she's probably around a C tier champion. Can really struggle with consistency. After level 20, you're B. I'd say like you're the top end of B, but I don't think you quite make it into that A ranking. As far as the regional ranking, she's in P and Z. I think she's pretty much mid. Remember, P and Z has Jinx, so there's no way that she's strong enough to take that top spot away from Jinx. For some pros, like we've talked about, that snowball effect, being able to start playing one cost reduced card and then just snowball that into playing a bunch of other cost reduced cards. Very, very strong. Massive burn damage. Once you're leveled up, you have so much extra damage you can throw at enemy units and the enemy nexus. And then a elusive champion. There aren't that many elusive champions, so having a champion that gains that elusive from that level up is actually a very strong effect. As far as cons, we also have that snowball. So if you're not able to get the ball rolling, you very much struggle since your whole deck is built around cost reduction. If you just don't get lucky and don't draw the cards you need, the deck feels absolutely awful to play. Then also, heavily champ reliant, Janna is your main way to get that consistent cost reduction. So if you're not able to draw her, or if she gets taken off the board right away, it feels very bad, and again, you'll probably end up losing the game. Alright, that's it for our guide though. I really hope this helped you out. Tomorrow we will be putting out a video of max level Janna versus Aurelion Sol, so if you want to see what a max level Janna can do, definitely pay attention to that video. Liking and subscribing would definitely help with that. I hope you all have a great day though.